Hello and welcome to the Word on Wearside podcast. Today we spoke to JJ O'Donnell, who is an ex-professional footballer, on the mental health struggles in football today. Over the last few months we have seen footballers affected on social media with their mental health, from Kyle Walker on X, aka Twitter, to Kedwin Scott, announced by Notts County of his struggles with his mental health. Today we spoke to JJ O'Donnell, an ex-professional footballer, on the struggles players face in the game today.
JJ, thank you for taking the time. First question, I'm going to go with a recent one for you. I know when you were live, you were injured. Thinking about mental health, when you were injured, how did it make you feel? How did it affect your mental health in a negative way? Was it a positive?
Yeah, it's one of them. I think it's a massive thing in football now, and I think probably from a professional footballer's, sportsman's career that I've had, it's very much how you handle it and what keeps you occupied during your injured days. It's probably the toughest time for a footballer. If you ask any footballer from the Premier League, probably to Saturday grassroots football, it's very much the toughest time for a footballer. To be injured is mentally tough. Depends on the severity of what you've got. If it's a few weeks, don't get me wrong, you don't want to miss games of football. But if it's like an ACL or in my instance where I dislocated my shoulder, it's going to be a while. It's tough. So I think it depends what you've got away from football as well. In terms of family, friends, a good support network around you is vitally important. I've got that, thankfully, which is always good, and I've got my coaching, which keeps me occupied as well. So it wasn't like I was totally away from the game. I was still part of the change room, etc. While I was at Blythe injured, but some people don't have that. They really don't, and I think the biggest thing around being injured is having that network of people around you to keep you going. To give, because you get tough days. You get tough days knowing that you can't play for a little while or stuff like that, and I think it becomes mentally challenging as much as anything. I just think the support network around you and your sort of life away from football, if you have one, if you're part time, for example, is massive and is crucial. But it's just, I think every person has a different way of handling it, and I think personal circumstances play a big part in that as well.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned like having a good support network. When you came back from injury, did you feel any sort of pressure to try and overperform, or was it just try and get on as you were before you were injured?
No, I think it depends. It depends on yourself. I really do. The pressure you put on yourself. I've always said since I was younger that being in sport, and especially professional sport, pressure is a privilege. Um, Pressure to me is self-inflicted. Really, I go out and as I've dropped down the levels, I've always believed that the pressure's on me because I should be the best player. And that's how I've always viewed football. I've always viewed that the pressure on me is to be the best player on the pitch. But you look away from football, and life's real pressures are with other things. You look at this time of year come, and people are putting pressure about putting presents under a Christmas tree, food on the table at Christmas, and I think football pressure is a different type of pressure because it's a pressure of enjoyment. My pressure is to put the ball in the goal. My pressure is to set someone up to win games of football. And if you put that into a life predicament of people have got to put food on the table and presents under a tree at this time of year, for example, or heat a house, that's a different type of pressure. So I think ultimately with mental health and pressure in football, it's the pressure you put on yourself as an individual. People handle pressure in different ways. For me, pressure's always been a privilege. It really has. It's my job. I've been paid all my career to entertain people and do my job on a pitch. But I think mentally, it's whether the strength of your mind and how you deal with pressure. Some people let it affect them greatly. It can affect performance. It can affect a lot of things. But I think ultimately, it's down to the individual and the characteristics of that individual to how they deal with pressure. And like I said, it's one of the things. Everyone will be different, but if you put things into perspective on a football pitch, there's a lot more pressures away from the field.
Yeah. And going away from injuries, obviously the more recent thing that is with mental health, would say, was social media. It's obviously massive with the likes of Instagram, Facebook, X. How does social media affect a footballer's mental health? Do you go out and look to see what people are saying about the match, or do you just ignore it? How does it affect you?
I did when I was younger. Yeah, I did when I first broke into the team at Luton. It was something that I did look at. And it's like I say, it's everyone's individual. You could speak to 1,000 people and they'll give you 1,000 different answers, because I think it's very much an individual basis of, does someone's comments affect you? And up until I was about 28, I was very much one of them where I wanted everyone to like me. I wanted everyone to think, oh, he's really good and all this. And I think as you grow older and you get a bit more mature, especially in football, you're not going to like everyone. I don't like everyone, so why would everyone like me? And I think when you're young, you want to be seeing what everyone sees about you. I was lucky enough to be at Luton, where it's a massive football club, 10,000 supporters every week, and you want the support to think, oh, he's good. So you end up delving into online social media, different platforms to see what people are saying, and you want to be liked. You want people to think you're a good footballer. That's just natural, and if anybody says otherwise, they're lying. But it depends on an individual basis of how you deal with that. Do you want to go and look for it to see if there's negative comments? Do you want to thrive on the high comments and delve into the low comments a little bit too much, or are you a placid individual who just gets on with it regardless if you're doing well? Some people never look at it; they're not bothered. But younger days for me, yes. And I think if you struggle mentally, then it's probably not the best thing to look into, because if you have a bad performance and you're playing for a big football club who are well supported, you're going to get criticised. They pay their money; they're more than welcome to criticise you. But it's just different individuals. How an individual deals with it from one person to the other will be totally different. Some people might not even look at it. I've played with lads who don't even have social media, and some might say that's a good thing. But for me, I think it's a great way of interaction. And but coming with that interaction is the possibility of trolling. You look at the higher level players. Even the last few days before we recorded this, Kyle Walker, racism, shocking comments, and it just gives people a platform behind the keyboard, social media. And I'm one of them who believes that it is what it is. Keyboard warriors, 99.999% of them would never say what they say on a computer screen, say it to your face. So I think you can take things with a pinch of salt. I've had things in the past sent to me, and it's just water off a duck's back for me. To be honest, I'm not really bothered about people's opinions. In terms of people who, not in a horrible way, supporters are more entitled to their opinions. But if you've never been involved in the game, never been involved in a professional environment, then your opinion, in a way, is a little bit immaterial to the circumstances that I'm involved in. So I think everyone's individual, everyone's different, and I think everyone handles situations differently.
Okay, I totally agree. You mentioned before about the strong support network that you had when you were injured. Nowadays we're seeing more like I think it was a few months ago with Kevin Scott, where Notts put the post out to say that he was struggling. Does National League teams and teams lower have anyone involved in the club who, if you're feeling like you're struggling with your mental health, do they have anyone that you can go speak to and who can provide and give advice?
So when I was at Gateshead, for example, yes, we had a club chaplain actually. So there's a chaplain who come in probably once, twice a month, maybe, just to be around training really, and that was what he was there for. If anybody wanted to go and speak to him, and I know they could. But as you drop down, I think it's something that's possibly. I know a lot of people voluntarily, like the chaplain at Gateshead, come in voluntarily. It's just having that person who, one, wants to do it, wants to be involved in football, and being around a football club for players to speak to, and two, the players go in to want to speak to them. I think it's a very masculine thing, mental health, that people don't want to ask for help and don't want to ask and say they're struggling. But I think over the last 15, 20 years, it's probably become a real symptom of society, really, that it's now a thing. I think pre 2000, I'm not really sure mental health was actually a thing in terms of people delved into it. I think, like you mentioned earlier, the side of social media where people can speak about it now a little bit more openly has given people the thoughts of, well, I'm not alone here. And I think in football especially, I think it's such a masculine environment, and you're meant to be sort of this alpha male of going on the pitch, showing how good you are as a footballer, and nothing affects you away from it. But it just shows Kyle Walker the last few days has been affected. I know there's a massive thing at Luton at the about 2 or 3 months ago. Elijah Adebayo had racism targeted at him, and the club openly put a statement out saying if anybody who's behind the account wants to come and speak to Elijah, to come and do it, because I think it needs to be faced head on. And it all depends on situations, and how people deal with stuff and what they let affect them. But yeah, it's support networks crucial, and I think clubs lower down the pyramid can do more. I think you'd get volunteers who want to come and speak to them, but I think higher up the pyramid, then people exist, and I think it's a lot more easy for someone to wanting to go into Manchester United than it would to go into Matlock Town, for example. And I think that's just the generics of what you're dealing with, but it's all about funds. It's all about the people wanting to do it, as in chaplains and volunteers going into a club to speak to people. And it's all about players wanting to speak as well. And I think people can get better at that. And I think the saying is it's okay not to be okay. And I think a lot more has come of that the last few years. And I think that will continue to improve in the years to come.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think like lower down, they should have more support. You mentioned before with your coaching, how does your coaching help you with your mental health? Is it obviously you mentioned with your when you were out on injury, the support networks and you were kept doing it. Is that helping a lot?
Yeah, it's terrific. It's my release, really. I've never seen coaching as a job. It is my job. It's my income. It's what I do day to day. But it's not a job, and it's just spending time with kids and children. And we said about pressures earlier. We deal with all sorts of children, and we deal with a lot of families, a lot of children, a lot of families that struggle. And knowing that the children are with us in a safe space, doing stuff they enjoy, and being active is a massive mental stimulant for me, really, because you know that when them child's with you playing football with a smile on their face, it might be hiding their troubles even for a couple of hours. And I think the feel good factor of seeing a child turning up who you know at home might be struggling, home life's tough, mum and dad have maybe got issues, family have got issues, and you know that they're in a safe space with you even for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours a day is a massive stimulant for me. And I think the impact that football's had on me and my career, and now giving something back to the children of tomorrow, if you like, is really important. And I think mental health wise for me, it's something touch wood that I've never struggled with. I think the support network's been great around me. It's been times where it's tough, but like I say to myself all the time, there's a million people worse off than me in this world. And from a coaching point of view, I try and be vibrant. I try and be that figure that the children want to be around and enjoy it, because like I say, everyone's home life isn't as jolly as others, and you never know what's going on behind closed doors. And I know that when I go to coaching, that them children with me are having a good time and enjoying playing football.
So you say you keep yourself positive, you keep yourself up. So you say that your mindset is that there's people worse off. Is there anything else that you sort of try and keep yourself doing, just to try and keep yourself in that positive mental mind state?
Yeah, I think coaching plays a massive part, and obviously we do have a little bits and pieces as well. But it's just having that, and I've always believed in it that there's a million people worse off than me, and my bad day is somebody else's absolutely brilliant day. And some of the things that we have, the career that I've had, the life that I've had, we give absolutely everything for it, and it's not in an egotistical way. It's just a case of when I'm feeling a little bit down or my day's not as good as it could be, I just think to myself that there's people who'd love the day that I'm having. I've got a roof over my head. I've got food on the table. I've got a family around me. I can kick a ball around on a pitch. I can go and coach children. I can go on holiday. I can do things that other people would love to do. And it's not a case of, oh, look at me. It's a case of I'm fortunate. I'm lucky to have the life I have. And I have tough days. Everybody has tough days. But I always think that there's light at the end of the tunnel for everybody. And my light at the end of the tunnel is normally the next day, and for some people it might be the next week, the next month. But I think that if you look at the positive side of things rather than the negative side, it's not always going to be bad. It really isn't. And like I say, I'm fortunate enough to have the outlook on life, and I know a lot of people don't have that outlook. But I think optimistically things will always get better. And if people are feeling down, if people are struggling, then there's always tomorrow. You know, there's a new day tomorrow, a new start. And for the majority of people who live in this country, in the UK, the life's not as bad as what people around the world are suffering. And don't get me wrong, not everyone's in the same position. I know people struggle. I see struggle in this country, but I think that if you put things into perspective sometimes and understand that it's not always going to be a cloudy day, then you've got to try and have the best positive outlook you can on this life.
And just finally, someone who plays football, whether it be a kid playing grassroots football or whether it be someone in the Northern League or something like that. What would you suggest to anyone who's suffering or who's going through the mental health struggles, whether that just be football related?
Speak, yeah, speak to someone. I spoke to a few lads over the years who struggle. It's natural, and I get it. I totally understand it, and maybe I'm in a fortunate enough position and privileged enough position to never have struggled, and maybe one day in the future I will struggle. But I think ultimately talking about it and being open about it is a massive thing now. In the day and age of social media, there's people who listen. Speak to a mate, speak to someone who you trust, and tell them you're struggling. It's fine to struggle. It's fine to have a down day. But I think it's probably even worse to conceal it all and bottle it all up, and then people not know that you're actually struggling. It is fine to struggle, part of life. Struggle. Everybody struggles day to day in different circumstances and different capacities. But I think to always be optimistic, always have that optimistic view that life, you get one of them, and you'll wake up tomorrow and it's another day, and your problems today. And I've always been a massive believer in this as well, that 99% of problems aren't really problems. I think that the problems that are personified within the human brain and within your mind are problems that probably aren't that big, and they will get solved, and they will get you'll be able to get over them. And overthinking's massive, mental health and overthinking and fearing the worst. And I like to think that I've always done okay because I'm probably the opposite. I'm very an optimistic person. I always think everything will be all right. I'm a very much a get up and go person, and my wife sometimes, it annoys her a little bit, but if she's ill, I'm sympathetic, but I'm like, well, you'll be fine tomorrow. And there's people in this world, like you say, in certain countries who might not be okay tomorrow. So optimism, I think optimism and speaking about things is the two probably most important things. It's always going to get better. 99% of your problems probably aren't even really problems. And if you can overcome and get through today to get to tomorrow, then tomorrow will be a brighter day than it has been today for most people.
JJ, that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
No worries, mate.
Things from a lack of energy after games to being isolated in a new country can affect players greatly. If anyone listening feels affected by mental health struggles, please seek professional help. Thank you for listening to this episode of Word on Your Side.